Hello, I'm John Muir Laws. I'm a nature journaler, and I want to invite you to become a nature journaler too. So what is nature journaling, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. What it is the process of when we go out into a natural environment, taking the experience and the observations and all the thinking and feelings that we have, and we're going to get it out of our head and onto a piece of paper. So I carry a notebook with me. And in this notebook, I'm recording the entirety of my experience. I like to think about what I'm collecting on the pages in three little categories. So the first is my observations. If I notice something, I'm putting it down on paper. I notice this, I put it down here. I notice this, I put it down there. And these observations build up. And then what happens is part two. I start to get curious about what I'm seeing. So as I'm observing something, I'm thinking to myself, like, why is that plant kind of light colored? What's the function behind that? I'll write that question down. The more that I write these things down and my questions are looking back at me, it makes me even more curious about what I'm seeing. And when you get curious, that curiosity sucks you into a deeper experience with whatever phenomenon you are looking at. So I start with observations and then I get curious. The final little piece in this is that I also pay attention to, like, what have I experienced before that in one way or another kind of reminds me of what I'm seeing right now? What can I take from my past lived experience and bring into this to help me think about this more carefully? So these first 3 points, I think of them as I notice, observations, I wonder, questions. It reminds me of these connections that I make. If I intentionally pay attention to those 3 categories, it's going to improve my observation, my sense of, my general feeling of curiosity, and my ability to think creatively about the experience that I'm having. So that's what I'm doing. Now let's talk about a little bit of the logistics of how you're going to do that. I like to think of 3 languages that I can use to take this experience and put it down on the pages of the journal. So the first for me is I like drawing pictures of what I see. So if you look through my notebooks, there's lots of pictures and diagrams of the sorts of things that I'm seeing. And when I do that, those drawings force me to look more carefully than I would if I were to walk up, say, with a camera and go click, click. My brain then turns off and I pay my attention to something else. But it slows me down to the speed at which I can really notice levels of subtlety and detail that I otherwise wouldn't. The purpose of these pictures is not to make a pretty picture. So if you're thinking, well, that's great, but I'm not an artist. You don't have to be an artist. Let's say that twice. You don't have to be an artist, right? The picture is not the thing. It's the observations that you make while you are making that picture. Another tool that I have is to write down my observations. So if also you look in these journals, there's a whole bunch of writing. Some things are easier to show with a picture, some things are easier to show with words. And so what I will do is intentionally use both of those. And another interesting thing is that the part of your brain that's involved with pictures is different than the part of your brain that's involved with words. So if you're intentionally using both of those, you will think differently as you're exploring whatever it is that you're looking at. The final language, we've got words, we've got pictures, is numbers. So I'm counting things, I'm measuring things, I'm timing things. I'm getting quantitative as I'm looking at things. I don't just say that there were a lot of birds there. I count them. If I can't count them, I estimate them. So I'm trying to get my brain to think with pictures, to think with words, to think with numbers. I get all those languages down on the piece of paper. So I like to think of it this way. I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. That's a little triad. On this hand, I've got words, pictures, and numbers. And what I'm doing when I'm nature journaling is I'm going out, I'm finding some phenomenon and I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, recording those with my words, pictures, and numbers. I get those together and I put them down on the pages of this journal. This fundamentally changes the way I think. It changes the way that I see. It connects me more deeply with the natural world and motivates me strongly to protect and to preserve nature around me. You can do this too. And I would like to invite you to become a nature journaler. All you need is to grab yourself a notebook and a pencil or a pen. You can add to that kit as time goes on, but those are just the raw essentials. Go out and start to explore. And as you do, don't just look, but notice and record, and then ask questions, make connections. Get all of that going on your piece of paper, and you will find that the experience that you have will be incredibly rich, and your memory of that will also be so much better than if you were just sort of to walk through the forest and kind of go like, oh, look at that. And then you walk out and you forget it. This changes the way our brain works. Don't just take my word for it. Try it. Get yourself these supplies, go out and try it, and notice, wow, I noticed so much more looking at that insect than I ever would have. And if you have that experience, I invite you to make this a regular part of how you interact with nature and the natural world. Thank you, and I hope that this can change your life the way that it has changed mine.